Hello and welcome to Learners Academy. My name is Samuel and I'm excited to share my knowledge on web development with you guys today. In this lesson, we'll be covering varieties of topics, especially in web development. We'll be talking about the HTML for beginners, CSS, JavaScript, React, and so forth. So first of all, we're going to start with the first part, which is HTML. What is HTML? HTML is simply an hypertext markup language. It uses a markup system composed of elements which represent specific contents which are markup, and this means that with HTML you can declare what is presented to a viewer. HTML is simply like a basic building block of a browser, and it is used to construct the basics of each website that you see today. Now, when we talk about the markup, what the markup means, we're talking about the element that consists of it, and we have different elements which includes the opening tag and the closing tag of an element. Example is the image tag, the meta tag, the links, input, the video, audio, table, and so forth. So let's get you started. Before you can get started with HTML, you first of all need a coding environment setup. So the first thing to set up is our code editor. We have varieties of different code editor, but we'll be working on the most common and best one, which is the one I'm using, which is called the Visual Studio Code. So you go over to your browser and you're going to search for Visual Studio Code. And if you are using Microsoft, it's very easy for you to install using the Microsoft Store. Or you can move to your browser and search for code.visualstudio.com/download. And you can be able to download them on your Windows, on your Linux, and Mac. And secondly, the second thing we're going to need for our coding environment is a browser, a web browser. And the most popular one is the Chrome browser, and we also have the Microsoft Edge browser, which is available for the Mac app and also for the Android, also for the Windows. You can get the Windows over here. Now the Google Chrome is also available for different screens, which is for the MacBook, the Linux, and also for the Windows. So let's get started. Now the one I'm using the Microsoft Edge because I love using Microsoft Edge. You can decide to use the Chrome browser, or you can decide to use the Microsoft Edge browser. It doesn't really matter which one you use. So let's go over to our VS Code after installation. So what you do, you right click on it and you have a window pop up like this. Now this is simply your coding environment where you're going to write your code. So this is called a coding editor. Now if you look over, you have Visual Studio Code editing involved, and over here we have the start, which means we have a new file, open folder, the clone, git repository, and connect to. So we have different things over here. Now the first thing we're going to do is we have to define a folder for storing all our files, for this lesson. So you have to navigate down to your home page. You right click on it and you're going to see new. Then you move over to folder. Now I have a new folder here, so we're going to call it HTML courses. HTML courses. Now I have a folder called HTML courses. So we're going to open the folder and define a new folder for our lesson, for the first lesson. So you right click again, then you move over to your folder. Then we're going to call it lesson 1. Lesson 1. So now what we're going to do, we're going to open this folder from our VS Code. So you're going to enter your VS Code and you click on the file icon, the file over there. You're going to see open folder. So you click on open folder. Then you have to navigate directly to your desktop session, which is this. We have the HTML courses. We open. Then we select the lesson 1 and you click on select folder. Immediately, let's say one folder will be opened on your VS Code. Now we can start writing our codes, but the first thing we need to do is to create a file for our HTML document. So if you move over to where your lesson is, you're going to see where we have new file, new folder, refresh explorer, and collapse folder explorer. So we're going to click on new file, and a cursor will be blinking over there for you to edit the file name. So we'll call it index.html. Now, the reason why we are calling it index.html is because when you are about launching your website, the index.html is the only file that is recognized by your hosting providers. So that's why we call it the index.html. Our root file is known as the index.html. Now, you need to be careful about your naming convention, in the sense that you should always name your files with lowercase and avoid spaces. Okay. Now, you press enter to save the file name. Now we can be able to write our HTML codes on the index.html file we just created. The next thing we're going to do, there are certain things we need to install, like a live session that can help us to preview our website live on the web browser. So to do that, we have to download the extensions. So you move over to the extension, your VS Code, you click on it, and the first thing you're going to search is live server. Live server. You're going to download the one that have this read week day. So you click on it. You can see over here mine is already installed. So when you have it installed, if you look down on your code editor, you're going to see a section that is saying go live, click to run live server. Now when I click on this file, it will take me directly to my browser and if you look at this, it's creating a local link, which means we have our IP address over here and a port of 5500. So it's opening this file on my IP address 127.0.01 and a port of 5500. So which means anything we're going to run on our code editor, it will be displaying live on our browser since we're already using the live server. So for example, we are having something like this is good. So if we move over to our browser, we'll be having similar stuff over here, which is this is good. Now you can see that it is connected automatically from our code editor. But this is not a proper way of writing an HTML document. We'll be learning a proper way of writing an HTML document after installing the other extensions. So the other extension we'll be installing is called a formatter, a document formatter, and the most popular one I love using is called Prettier. Prettier, you search for Prettier, and it has a blue tick over here. So you click on it and you have to install your Prettier. The Prettier enables you to be able to format your code in a way that you can be able to read your code, and also if someone wants to read your code, it will make it very easier for the person to read your code without stress. And we have one more code editor we'll be using. It's called the GitHub theme. One more extension we'll be using, GitHub theme. Now you can install this over here. I'm using the predefined GL theme from VS Code, but if you want to get other themes, you can use the one from GitHub theme. Now I can decide to click on GitHub theme dark or set to dark dim, default lights. I can set to high contrast and so for dark light contrast. Now the aim of using a theme, most people have high defects, so by using these themes, your eye will be able to blend with the kind of code editor you're using, so that you can be able to see the things, the text you're writing very well. So I love using the GitHub dark default. I think I prefer this. This is what I love using. So now let's move over to writing our first HTML code. how does an HTML work? An HTML works with a tag. HTML works with tag. We have what we call tags in HTML. We have the opening tags, and we have the closing tag. The opening tags simply starts with a less than bracket and a closing less than bracket. Now, the text inside defines the opening tag. Now, the text inside becomes the elements of that tag, which means we have a less than and a greater than with the elements in it. Then the closing tag simply has a less than and the element with a slash, a backward slash, and a greater than. So this is a typical example of an opening tag, while this is a typical example of a closing tag. So this is how we understand what an opening tag is and also a closing tag is. So let's go over to writing our first HTML code. So the first thing we're going to write when defining an HTML tag is we're going to define the kind of doc type that it is. So, and the doc type we're writing is an inbuilt doc type which is called HTML. So we're going to use a less than, and the doc type we're going to write HTML. Then the second tag we'll be using is called the HTML tag. Now the HTML tag has an opening and closing. Also, the HTML tag has an opening and closing. The reason I'm emphasizing on opening and closing tag is because we have one more other tag which is called the self-closing tag, but we're going to learn that during the course of the lesson. Now, after writing the HTML tag, the HTML tags, this is where all the codes we'll be writing or all the structures we'll be designing on our website is going to be. So all the codes is going to be inside the HTML tags, and the HTML tag consists of two sections. One is called the part that the viewers cannot see when they run the website live, when the website is live, and that is known as the head tag. So the head tag contains elements that are not visible to the users, while we have the second section which is called the body tag, and the body tag contains sections that are visible to the users, like the headings, the contents we're going to see on the browsers. So those are all contained inside the body tags. So let's go over and define it. So we have the head, and we have the body. Now this simply tells us this is the two section, which is the head tag and also what, the body tag. Now on the head tag, like I said, it contains things that are not visible to the users. Example of these are the meta elements, the title of our document, and so forth. We have different types of meta elements. So we can define the meta tag using the word meta, and we are going to use the name, and under the name we have different types. We have the one for author, and we also have its content. The content carries the name of the author, so I'm going to say Linux. And we'll close it over here. Then a typical example of another meta tag we have is called the description. So we're going to do meta, the name is going to be description, and the content is going to be learning HTML basics. Okay. Now, if you notice something over here, without me putting my closing greater than some angle over here, you're going to see that the head tag is displaying red, which simply means that the previous line statement is not complete yet. So the moment I include the greater than, you're going to see it's going to go back to green, which means that we are on the right path and we are good to go. So this is a typical example of the head. And the last thing I'm going to tell you is about the title tag. So the title carries the title of the page. For example, I can say my first website. Now, when we go over to our browser, where the page is, and reload it, you can see over here the document name is now showing my first website, which simply means we have edited the title of this document. Now, over to the body, like I said earlier, the head contains elements that are not visible to the user apart from the title that displays. The meta and the meta tags and all that are not visible. Then the body tags contains elements or tags that are visible to users on the browsers. Now we have different types of tags, but we'll just be giving an intro. For example, we have the heading tags, the H1. Now the H1 is known as the heading tag, the number one heading tag, and each page has only one heading tag. One H1 is a unique one which simply tells you the title of that particular page. So in each page we always have one H1 tag. So we have, let's say, this is my first website. This is my first website. Now if we move over to the browser, you can see we're having, this is my first website. Now over here you can see we're having an error here. So let's go over to our website to see where the error is coming from. You can, like I said earlier, once you have an opening tag, you must have a corresponding closing tag on it, on this. So we're going to put the less than to close it now. And also, okay. Now if we move over to our browser, we will not be seeing that H1 anymore. Now this simply tells you we have declared our first website and is live and running, and the name of our website is my first website, and say this is my first website. Now there's another tag I'm going to introduce to you, which is known as the paragraph tag. The paragraph tag, and is denoted with the P symbol. So P, we're going to say this is a paragraph. This is a paragraph. Now you can see over here we have the H1 tag is bold, but the paragraph tag is not bold. Now the paragraph tag, it simply gives you a new paragraph. So any content being found in between those tags is going to start on a new line. That is why we have it as a paragraph tag. But on the H1 tag, it is a block level element that takes the full width of that particular part it has on the browser. So whenever we have another H1, it's not going to continue from this part, but it's going to go to the next line, because this one has already taken the full width of this length it is, and the next one is going to take the other part. Now you can notice that the H1 tag is bold, but the paragraph tag is not bold. That is why the H1 denotes the heading. Each heading has a unique identity of being bold. So we have, like I said, we have other tags like the H2. H2, we have, I can say this is H2 tag. We're going to have another tag, H3. This is H3 tag. And we have the H4. Now if you move over to our browser, you can see that from the H1 tag down to H2, H3, H4. The higher the tag, the higher the H tag, the smaller the text is, but they are all bold. So the highest tag we have over here is the H1, followed by the H2, the H3, the H4, H5, and down to the last heading tag, which is the H6. So our heading tag varies from the H1 down to H6 tag. But the paragraph tag is just a single tag, which is just the paragraph tag. It doesn't have those P1, P2, P3. It is denoted as the P tag only. So we'll be stopping on this part of the lesson, and in our next lesson we'll be learning more about the HTML, and see you there. Thank you for listening. Bye.